If you're building a PC in 2026, watch this first. These mistakes cause the most panic, the most wasted money, and the most "why is this not working" moments. And yes, I've saved the worst one until last because it catches way more people out than you think. Right, let's get into it. The first mistake happens before you even ever touch a screwdriver. Most people check CPU socket and motherboard compatibility to make sure that they're going to work together. That's the easy part. What most people forget about is physical compatibility. Things like GPU length, despite what some people say, size does matter. CPU cooler height, those thick radiators, PSU length with cables attached, even AIO tube clearance. Everything can be compatible on paper and still not fit in real life. I've seen people buy a GPU that's literally 1 or 2 centimeters too long for their case. At that point, you're not just adjusting anything, you're more than likely either returning parts or having to go get a new case. Another really common one is front-mounted radiators blocking GPU clearance. This one feels simple because you've already checked your GPU length fits in your PC, but what you've not anticipated is actually the thickness at the front of the case is not just your fans, but also the radiator thickness as well if that's where you're mounting an AIO. I've seen tall air coolers so tall that they stop you from even putting on your side panel. People try to force it and end up just either bending them or breaking tempered glass. Yes, use PC part picker, absolutely, it's a godsend. I'll leave a link down below, but always double check the manufacturer dimension. This is one of the most expensive mistakes to make after you've purchased all of your parts. On to number 2. RAM. Now there's a couple of things here and it's quite a sneaky one because at first glance you may not know actually you've done something wrong. Now first of all, there's the slots. Almost always in every scenario, if you're populating with 2 RAM sticks, you want to be in slots 2 and in slots 4. And that's because of dual channel memory. Each channel is divided between 2 of the RAM slots. And if you have them both side by side next to each other, that means actually you've got both in the same channel, which means you're doubling the latency between the CPU and the RAM. If you have just the one stick, it's more than likely just going into slot 2. And if you're filling up all of them, that's absolutely fine. But do make sure you're buying your RAM sets together because even if you buy the same brand, at the same speed, at the same latency, there's no guarantee it will work. And then there's the most obvious one, right? XMP and Expo. If you don't enable this in the BIOS, you're not getting the speed that you paid for. If we look at DDR5 for example, and you bought 6000 speed, but actually you didn't enable anything in the BIOS, chances are, or guaranteed, it's running at 48,000 instead. It's completely stable, but it's completely wrong and you're not getting what you paid for. There's a really quick check to do. I mean, personally, there's better software out there to monitor speeds, latency, and things like that. Hardware Info is one that comes to mind, but as a really quick check, just open up your task manager, go to memory, and if it's not what you paid for, you found the problem. You paid for the performance, now make sure you're actually using it. Thermal paste, stop overthinking this. Thermal paste causes way more stress than it actually deserves. People worry about too much, too little, spread it, don't spread it, different patterns, and honestly, it probably doesn't matter. Here's the reality, modern thermal paste is very forgiving. A small pea-sized dot in the center of the CPU, mount on your cooler, and the mounting pressure will do the spreading for you. Too much paste would just likely make a mess, and too little will raise temps up slightly. But neither one instantly kills your CPU. Now I know with bigger IHSs, there's been some examples out there where you may need a little bit more of a P dot or to do a slightly different pattern, but if you're really worried, I tend to just do a bit of a P and then a really thin X just going across. And as a side note, people obsess about how often they need to actually repaste. The only time you need to reapply the paste is if you remove the cooler, or if it's been 5, 6, 7 years and you're noticing spikes in temperature. And unless you really know what you're doing, avoid liquid metal. It adds risk, very little value for most builds, and it's probably just not worth you thinking about. Now, number 4, RGB has ruined airflow. A lot of people mount fans just to show the aesthetic side of an RGB fan and accidentally turn their entire case into one giant exhaust. Now your fan has a direction on it. If you look at the side of the fan, you will always find an arrow that tells you which way the airflow moves. Now the X is typically always exhaust, so if you're looking at the X, the air is coming towards you. And unfortunately, in most scenarios, the RGB pleasing side is on the opposite side. So when you're putting that all inside of your case, just to look pretty, all you're doing is blowing air out. And that's great for removing hot air, but what you're not doing is actually drawing in any cool air to cool the components. Now, as a quick rule of thumb, your front fans are usually intake. If you have front side or bottom, also intake. And then you want the top of your case and the rear to be exhaust. Heat does tend to rise, so pushing it straight out the top is the least path of resistance. As a side note, you can now buy reverse fans where actually you'll get the RGB on the opposite side. So you can purchase variants where you'll get more RGB and get your desired airflow, but always check the manufacturer's site. And if in doubt, as I mentioned, look at the side of the fan for the arrow direction. If you don't do this, then you're likely going to get higher temperatures, weird ramping up and down of the fans. It can be slightly noisier as well. And if you've got a negative pressure, you're going to be sucking dust in through all the little nooks and crannies in your case. Because you have no intake fans, it has to draw that air in from somewhere. Now, looking pretty is fine, but airflow comes first. Number 5, leaving the plastic on the cooler. This is a painful one. Everybody says they'll never do it. Until they do. Most CPU coolers ship with a clear plastic film on the cold plate. If you forget to remove it, your PC will probably still boot, however your temps will skyrocket and your fans will go crazy and the panic can set in. You can find yourself going through all kinds of troubleshooting steps to try and resolve the issue, because more than likely what happens as well, even if you go to reset the CPU or check your paste spread, if you don't look carefully, that thermal paste is now covered that plastic cover, and at a quick glance, you probably won't even notice it's there. And if you don't, this is going to lead you down a whole rabbit hole of troubleshooting steps to try and figure out what's going on. And I know loads of people talk about it all of the time, but it's a 2-second check. Just make sure you have a look at that first and rule it out. Finally, number 6. All right, this is the one. Some of you may have already guessed this because again, it's something a lot of people do, but it's plugging your display cable into your motherboard instead of the GPU. On the back of your motherboard, you will typically find HDMI ports. And what most people get confused about is they think they've plugged their GPU into the motherboard, and then you can plug that display port directly back into the motherboard versus the GPU ports, and you'll get a signal. And sometimes if you've got an iGPU, you will. The PC can turn on, the lights come on, the fans spin, and you either boot into your operating system or you just get a black screen, no signal. The worst thing about it is, as soon as you get into the operating system for the first time, you're going to go about your business installing all of your drivers and relevant pieces of software. Watch out, by the way, because I'm going to have another video coming on the first things you should do when you build your PC and how to optimize it for the most performance. But you go about your business setting up your PC, and it's not until you get into gaming that you find, oh, actually, I'm not getting the performance that I need here. And that can seriously make you question what's going on. So just double check you're not plugged into the wrong port. Even some experienced builders can make this mistake. But hey, if this video saved you from making even one of these mistakes, drop a like. It really helps the channel. And if you're building a PC right now, why don't you put in the comments below some of the mistakes that you've seen or made. Also, some of my favorite parts are linked in the description below. And if you want fewer headaches and better builds, drop a subscribe.